Welcome to the Uptown Community Podcast, where we see what we can learn, who we can get to know, and if we can understand each other and our neighborhood a little bit more.
We make up a brilliant tapestry. By examining the various threads and aspects of our community, we can appreciate how each and every person contributes in their own unique way.
This is a special episode. I will be popping in at various points, but depending on how you listen to this podcast, there might be visual components on the actual podcast, or if you go to YouTube or the Uptown Community Podcast websites, there will be videos there as well. So I'll provide some links to that. We'll be launching right into the episode, so I'll go ahead and introduce our friend Ellen Peterson, who is a member of People's Church and is familiar with Preston Bradley Center. Instead of going over kind of parts of their life, we'll be doing something today. What are we doing today?
So today, our plan was to sort of capture some of Preston Bradley, the building in the sanctuary to start with, and hopefully when the spring comes and it gets a little warmer, we can go outside and capture some of the beautiful elements of the exterior facade of the building. My plan is to stroll through the sanctuary here with Ben in a moment and find some interesting elements of detail in the sanctuary to sketch.
Let's see, you lead the way, and we'll start recording again shortly.
You know, maybe just kind of like the windows and the way the curve of the balconies kind of come up. And what I typically do is something called urban sketching, which has been around for quite a while, but becoming a little bit more and more popular, especially there's a global community called urban sketchers. So this has brought urban sketching out into the limelight a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, and you've been discovering different parts of being an artist for 2 years, 3 years now?
Actually, just a year now.
Okay.
No, I took a class. It was a perfect thing to do during COVID. It took me a long time before I felt comfortable, and I still don't always call myself an artist, even though others have. I always felt that growing up, I didn't have any artistic or creative ability. But with urban sketching, because you don't have to be so exact, you know, like the drawing, I think anyone can pick up on.
I'm arguably overthinking this, and I'm doing a lot more editing of the audio than I thought I would or should. I've done this before, where I've recorded an adventure and think I can present that in this structured, methodical way that I am trying to keep consistent in the podcast, but because I want to be accurate as possible, instead of an adventure, it's more as a presentation of the building on this day that happened to be drawn by Ellen, but we can still understand who Ellen is and this specific location that we chose to go to and where Ellen was going to do the drawing from. We're kind of near the stage, or closer to the stage. We're still on the second balcony, but there's the face and the panelings on the trims
with
okay.
the the triangles, the diamond shapes, the rectangles, and the squares. And I really actually like that. I like those details. And I like the windows.
It's obvious, or it's more obvious today of why you like this corner, because you get more sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of a sensitive building to the light. Take a lot of playing around with color just to capture all that color. So
Yes.
probably be more difficult to capture that, but it's lots of shapes involved.
Lots of shapes, a lot of detailing with the beautiful trim, or I believe it might be called millwork, which is basically any wood that's been exposed, that was produced in a mill. They also call that trim, I believe. There's some beautiful trim along the balconies with, like you said, different shapes, diamonds, I see triangles, rectangles. So I'd like to definitely capture those shapes on the wood. Of course, you've got the 6 windows, and then a lot of chairs. Quite a bit of chairs.
Lots of chairs, yeah.
1,000, at least 1,000, 2,000
Yeah.
maybe, right?
Yeah, we're getting into 2000s, and then on the second balcony, it's a little bit smaller
Yeah.
than the first floor, which is just jammed with chairs, all those theater chairs, as you were saying. There's a lot in the third balcony, but the second balcony is kind of the ceiling area is a little bit. It just feels cozier here on the second balcony, and so that's where we're at. And so we've talked about those different things that are going on of capturing the enormity of the room, different balconies, angles, and how they curve around, and details. So we can go into these corners that we're in, that it's not like a main area, it's not somewhere that people are usually at,
Mm-hmm.
but it's an interesting snapshot. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what you come up with. I'll let you sketch here, and surveying all the different things going on in an experience is a step beyond just observing, but really there are 2 main ideas. There is a building of the Preston Bradley, and then how it is viewed as an artist, and the perspective applied from Ellen and her experience of the building.
So yeah, what I like to do is, and this is common with the urban sketching community, it's nice to sometimes break it down. A building such as this, the Preston Bradley Center, is very complex in its beauty, both out and in. And so what I like to do is to try to, it would be impossible to sketch this interior in its entirety in a day, in a week, in a month, it would take years to get it just right, Okay. Same with the outside, especially, if you wanted to get it pretty exact. So what I like to do is break it down and simplify it into vignettes, little sections of my sketchbook that I can then focus in on a couple of things of interest. Rather than trying to get everything. The idea is to sort of capture the essence of a place. Uh-huh. So with that in mind, you want to first observe, study the scene, and then pick out sort of like a focus. What details jump out to you? What do you want to focus on? And I think for where we're standing here, I think the just the beautiful curvature of the balcony, the two balcony levels. That wood paneling, of course, and the windows.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what you come up with. I'll let you sketch here, and yeah, how long do you think we can check in?
Yeah, I would say it might take maybe about 15 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes for a quick little sketch. That's not with the watercolor. With the watercolor, it might be more like 30 minutes or so, and then a little bit longer for the the balconies, maybe more like an hour.
Okay. Yeah, I'll check in and see how you're what you're able to focus in on. I think we've covered kind of the surface to depth things, and then yeah, we'll see what kind of takes priority and what things you're able to capture.
Sounds good.
Okay. Go to uptowncommunitypodcast.com under the episodes and Preston Bradley Center. There is a video of the project I did with Ellen. But for those that are just listening, here is some music from Public Domain Chamber Music. I think that seems to capture some of the cascading nature of seeing the rows of chairs and the balconies that swoop around in the back, near the back of the sanctuary, to fill up this huge, vast space, which is empty of people. And there's a solitary nature of this song that I really like.
In drawing perspective, I have picked up a couple of tips, in terms of your lines and how they need to sort of slope upward and downward in order to capture that perspective, but there's a lot more to it.
Okay.
Obviously. And I also feel like I probably put in a little bit too much detail. That's something I'm working on as an artist.
Just with the trim that's around on the kind of the face of the balconies.
And then you see that I drew in some chairs just to so you would know that this is a balcony. I did not draw in each individual chair over in this section or this section, because for one thing, when you're standing here looking out, you can't really make out chairs very well because it's so dark.
It is really dark. Okay.
Yeah, so I think what I'll do is I'll probably, when I color it in with the paint, I'll probably add darker area shading in this section, and then with my waterproof black pen, I'll just put some lines in just to give the illusion that there are chairs there, but it doesn't have to be exact. Do you think that they look like chairs or just squares?
They capture elements of chairness, but I think there's so many geometrical aspects, and it is dark enough to really capture all the details of every individual chair. But even the windows. I mean, there's you have a little bit of the elongated sections in between the windows, but yeah, that's very symmetrically spaced out between the windows.
Oh, I
And
see. There's no space in between the windows on my sketch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if the detail is really important, because I think the important thing is to capture the window itself and how it appears bigger, even. I mean, because that is where the light comes in, and the rest of the sanctuary is so dark.
Yeah. Well, what I could do, since I actually did do this in pencil, which I sometimes don't do first, especially like if I'm outside and I'm on the go and I don't have a lot of time, I'll just do the pen sketch.
So connecting impressions of the building and how that can be portrayed is our connection phase, phase 3. And then as we get deeper in our experience of the sanctuary of Preston Bradley, in the small corner that we happen to choose that sunny afternoon, but there's still an aspect that this building is a church, yet it feels like a theater, and it's so vast and spacious that there's this theater feeling to it.
Well, it also doesn't look like a church from the outside, your typical church.
It's not exactly a church when you're inside. You get the impression from the mural, but there's no crucifixes anywhere, and there's
Right.
yeah, it has kind of some theater aspects.
It definitely plays numerous roles, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They have had wonderful, amazing concerts here, it's really a perfect venue for a concert, as a concert hall, due to the fabulous acoustics. I attended a concert here a few years ago, and it was just, I was so amazed, so amazed. So
Yeah, all right.
incredible.
Well, I think
It
we
is.
talked about the vignettes, but it
Yeah.
seems like
Right,
you're
right.
captured by the vastness of the space.
Right.
Instead of,
Yeah.
I think,
I wouldn't have, I could still do a vignette, and I might try that a little bit later on. I did take a picture of the scene, and I could go home and try to do a vignette, but the thing about that is then you're obviously not going to get much detail at all, because then you have to really condense everything. But yeah, I had started off thinking I might do vignettes, but because this space is so large, I thought, well, you know what, I'll just use a whole page. And then, maybe I could go back and do a vignette of just maybe one section of the paneling. That might be kind of cool.
yeah.
Just the wooden panels with the interesting shapes. That would be kind of a neat. And maybe with a window above it, that would be a really cool.
It seems like we can do this in 2 parts, and so the step 4 going forward part of the discussion can be a lot about just what are the intentions for the final phase of the drawing. But there are some takeaways and how this experience works into community, which I thought was kind of interesting. There's still elements of being connected, even just by the imagery of all the chairs. I think that's an easy thing to obsess, because there are so many chairs in this.
And there's a lot of ghosts of people past sitting in those chairs.
Have you felt anything like that while you're here?
I haven't. No.
No.
But I often think back to what another member of the church told me, a story about how it was either when he was little or maybe one of his parents were little, but he grew up in this church, and he or his, maybe one of his parents, remembers sitting directly behind Eleanor Roosevelt.
Wow. Okay.
Because Dr. Reverend Preston Bradley was a prolific speaker,
Yeah.
and had friends in high places and low places, and everything in between. And people. This used to be a very prominent area, from what I understand as well. And so it would. This was back in the 20s and 30s and 40s when he preached and gave his messages, and just the whole sanctuary was filled to the brim. But I always think back to that story, and I think it's so interesting, just the history of the place, and who came before us. So it's not a haunted place.
Yeah. Yeah.
To work in or hang out in.
But I think one of the terms that I think is really applicable, that is tossed around sometimes in religion, is cloud of witnesses. That you don't feel like you're being haunted or anything's coming after you, but you do feel
interconnected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do have a connection with the past and what this building could be. And, yeah.
And it's such a, this could be a whole nother podcast, but it's such a welcoming and inclusive community here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a beautiful, wonderful space to be in. And,
well, we'll try to capture that in the future, but thanks for coming along to record your drawing process today. And
thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun, and I look forward to sketching more.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right.
Thanks,
Ellen.
Jen.
Yep.
This project is made possible by the Unitarian Universalist Funding Program. Support the podcast at uptowncommunitypodcast.com/donate. Ben is the host, producer, creator, promoter, and innovative force behind this project. Help us get the word out about this podcast. As a project of People's Church, the Uptown Community Podcast supports creativity, love, and humanity. Thank you.